Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here today speaking with you, and an honor to be in such good company, so thank you. I'm excited today to talk to you about talent. It's what I've spent the past decade of my career on, and it's where I really believe there's the best capacity for lasting change. This story, though, my story, actually starts about 6,000 miles away 4 years ago in a place where soon it will be negative 30 degrees every single day until April. Negative 30. And that's probably a temperature that most of you have yet to experience in your life. I certainly had not experienced it. I can tell you what it's like now, though. That kind of cold turns you into a turtle. So I used to joke with friends that you walk outside and the cold air hits you and your head just shrinks back into your neck as far as it can. It's the kind of cold that Canada Goose coats, which are now ubiquitous on the sidewalks of New York City, were actually designed for. So how in the world did I end up freezing my butt off in Mongolia? Well, you see, I'm compelled by what I call once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. These are opportunities to work on challenges that are of the here and now. Challenges that reflect the world as it is today, but may not exist a couple of short years from now. And 3 years ago, Mongolia was facing unprecedented change. The country's very small population of 3 million people was flooding into the capital city. And one of the biggest mining companies in the entire world had decided to build a copper mine that would be the world's third largest copper mine in the middle of the Gobi Desert. What this kind of change does to a country's economy and society is amazing. And unfortunately, there are lots of examples of similar projects that have less than ideal outcomes. Luckily, this company was trying to do something different. And so when I got a call asking if I wanted to help build the next generation of Mongolian talent and leave my corporate consulting job in New York City to do it, I said yes. From the beginning, the company's goal was to build a national workforce. But I came to realize that economics, which is often the driving force behind this kind of effort, is actually the least important reason to do it. I used to joke with my Mongolian friends that at meetings with the Mongolian government, I was very easy to spot. I was the only white, curly-haired American girl sitting at the table. And the same was true in a different way for my male Australian colleagues in their 50s. Don't get me wrong, injecting foreign talent that has a certain kind of expertise is very useful in situations like this. But in complex systems where there's deep cultural nuance and long-standing, very deep power structures, outsiders will always be outsiders. No matter how much knowledge you bring, no matter how much expertise you have, and no matter how well-intentioned you are, and no matter how much you integrate into that culture. It was around this time that I got a phone call from another organization that wanted to tell me about mother-to-child transmission of HIV. Did you know that 650 children are infected with HIV on an annual basis? At the time, I didn't. 650 children every single day. That's over 200,000 kids every year being infected with HIV. And about 90% of those infections result from transmission from a mom to the child while she's pregnant or breastfeeding. But here's what really struck me. 98% of those cases are actually preventable with one pill once a day that a mom takes while she's pregnant and breastfeeding. 98% of the cases are preventable. Now, for most of my life, I've been blessed with a very healthy family, but right around the time this phone call came, which is around the time that I was transitioning out of my role in Mongolia, my husband's father was battling an inoperable malignant brain tumor that ultimately took his life. And I couldn't help but look at the suffering that his family and I were going through together and thinking about these 200,000 kids who would be infected with HIV and face a similar fate as my husband's father before their second birthday. And yet, this was a diagnosis that was given to them that was devastating and almost completely preventable. To me, this felt like one of those once-in-a-lifetime problems. And what's more, Born Free Africa, the organization on the other end of the phone, was using talent to try to help solve it. Oh, excuse me. Luckily, there's big momentum towards the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV. And it's a testament to the work that so many governments and organizations are doing to try to rid the world of this problem. In fact, there's been about a 60% decline in the number of infections between 2002 and 2013 alone. And yet, there's still work to be done with these 200,000 children infected on an annual basis. It's because the challenges in public health, many of the challenges that the other speakers have spoken about, are complex, and they're difficult to overcome. For some of you, you may be very familiar with images like these and experience these challenges firsthand. And for others of you, these challenges will be brand new. But for each of those 650 mother-baby pairs that's infected with HIV on a daily basis, there's a story. There's the mom in the western province of Kenya who has to walk miles to get to her local health clinic in order to access the medication that she needs to keep her child safe. And the mom and her newborn son in Nigeria who get to their local clinic without her husband knowing, which is a problem on its own, only to find that often the medication is actually stocked out of the clinic, and she can't get that one pill once a day that she needs to keep her son free of HIV. And the challenges are true at the management level as well. The clinic director, who's very well-intentioned and passionate about his job, has so many health issues on his plate that the pages are stacked high, sometimes 2 feet high, on either side of his desk. And the nurses, who are also passionate about their patients, need to use paper ledgers in order to track their patients and the moms who come in for HIV counseling and testing. And on a weekly or monthly basis, all of those nurses need to key in that data from a paper ledger into a computer to feed into the national database, all the while trying to decipher each other's handwriting the best they can to make sure that accurate information actually gets into that computer system. Now, there are countless organizations and individuals working to solve these problems. But in a system where governments, communities, donors, and policymakers are working as fast as they can in order to achieve elimination and overcome these challenges, the question is, can progress happen more quickly? Now, in Mongolia, we drove change from the inside of the system, using national talent to make change from within. The question that I and Born Free were asking was, can a similar approach, a similar model, work on a completely different continent for a completely different purpose, the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV within the public sector? In April 2014, I found myself at the complex of Kenyatta National Hospital in Nairobi. I was there meeting with the director of the National AIDS Control Program, a guy by the name of Dr. Martin Sarango. Dr. Sarango is a great leader. He's sharp and smart, and he's motivated and motivating. He also wears a suit almost every day of the year, no matter how hot it gets on the hottest of Kenya's days. And I was meeting with him to talk about what could create that kind of step change acceleration in Kenya. Now, most people go to Dr. Sarango and they ask questions saying things like, I have great talent. I have some awesome people. Do you want them? We were going to Dr. Sarango saying, what kind of talent would you need in order to accelerate your prevention program? And do you want to hire that talent together? And where would you put them within the health system in order to achieve the biggest change? Now, Dr. Sarango had great answers to all of those questions. You see, when the clinical solution is known and the financial resources, although needed, are not the rate-limiting factor, talent is the sweet spot. And Dr. Sarango, in a very short conversation, led us to this conclusion. Management talent is what drives management for execution and helps make sure that all of those resources that are being pumped into the system are actually effective. Let's reflect for a moment on the business world. If I ask you the question, what kind of person do you put on your toughest problem? What would you answer? When CEOs get asked this question, they answer without hesitation. My best people. I put my best people on my toughest problem. And that makes sense to all of us intuitively, right? But I think what we most often think about when we hear the best people is someone who has a skill set that's most applicable for that problem. In fact, what we observe more often is that those best people get put on all kinds of problems that are very different from each other. In fact, those best people have a skill set that's very specific, which makes them the best. They're the people that know how to break down barriers in order to keep work moving. They're the people that build and leverage relationships in order to clearly define a target and manage towards a change. They're the people that know where to find the knowledge if they don't have the right expertise. And they're the people that most understand that in order to have the best impact, they need to work through others. In this way, their impact is exponential. All of this can be summarized to me by the word spark. These are people that spark change by breaking down barriers and identifying the right people that they need to work through to get that change to happen. And this is the concept of catalytic talent. Now, I want to be clear. Catalytic talent is unique. Catalytic talent is not necessarily your typical seconded staff who jet in with a certain amount of expertise and work on a project for a couple of months, producing deliverables and building capacity along the way. In our view, catalytic talent has to be national. They have to be from within the system in order to make the most lasting change in that system. I can tell you what it looks like in Kenya. In Kenya, catalytic talent looks like people that are hired from within the culture, but outside of the public health system. And yet, when they sit around the lunch table with their colleagues, they introduce themselves as government. They introduce themselves as part and parcel of the system that they are working to change. They're also represented by a woman who's about 7 months pregnant and on a weekly basis hikes up to a 9-floor walk-up in order to see the county health management executive in Kisumu County. And she hikes up those 9 flights of stairs with her belly every single week in order to make sure that she gets FaceTime with that county health executive to show him the latest data on the prevention of mother-to-child transmission and ensure that this issue stays front and center for him. She's realized that he's a critical lever for change, and she's working through him in order to make sure change happens at the county level. And again, most importantly, this team of catalytic talent working under Dr. Sarengo in Kenya believes that their success is dependent upon the success of others. From a reporting perspective, their success and their goals reflect the success and the goals of the county that they're supporting. Now, last month I was in this conference room in Nairobi. You can see Dr. Sarengo actually on the right-hand side of this image, and a team of catalytic talent working to eliminate mother-to-child transmission of HIV in Kenya. It's hard to see in this image, but actually projected up on the wall is a chart of data. But this isn't just any data, because everybody's looking at data all the time to drive decisions, right? This data is actually very, very granular data of elimination progress in Kenya. We're looking at it at a county level, at a sub-county level, at a facility level, and in fact, at a level where we can say of each of the members of this catalytic team, what kind of change are you driving in the counties that you're supporting? Or in other words, what kind of progress is your county making that you're helping to create? And although this may seem like a pretty classic and simple management technique, this is part of the spark that this catalytic team is helping to drive and helping to create. By looking at data at this level, we're able to understand where the problem really is. And this team is able to go back to those that they're working with at the counties and say, here's what's going on with mother-to-child transmission in our area. What do we think about our progress so far? And what kind of decisions are we going to make based on this clear information? Without knowing where the problem is, it's really tough to solve it. And so although this seems like a very basic management technique, in fact, it's the spark that will drive change in these counties. And what we're seeing is that with this catalytic talent in place, we've actually made adjustments to the data for the year 2014 for the elimination of mother-to-child transmission. Although we see that there's a bigger issue here around data reporting, similar to what I described in the beginning with these paper ledgers and keying into the system, catalytic talent is sparking a more granular look at what's happening and allowing us to make decisions based on more accurate information. There's also a catalytic team working for elimination in Nigeria. And whereas Kenya is just a few short months into their time working within the government to drive change, this team in Nigeria has been up and running for almost 2 years. And what we see is that change is possible, even in complex systems with tons of stakeholders, deeply rooted power structures, and all the challenges of an emerging economy. In fact, from 2012 to 2014, this catalytic team helped drive a nearly 100% uptick in the number of moms accessing the drugs that they need to keep their kids and themselves safe. And what's more, the changes ripple across the system. There's been a 98% increase from 2013 to 2014 alone of women accessing HIV testing. Now, of course, this catalytic team is not solely responsible for these results. There are countless organizations and passionate people and governments working on this. But what we know is that the catalytic talent has helped spark the change that we're seeing in this data. And while these graphs are not static and progress varies from month to month, the trend is clear. We are on our way towards elimination in Nigeria, and we expect to see similar results in Kenya in the near future. Now, I'd like to leave everybody with this final thought. It's something that someone said to me just as I was on my way to Mongolia a couple years ago. The only change that matters is the change that happens after you leave. This has stuck with me for a long time. And I think as change makers that are being injected into various systems around the world, it's something really important to remember all the time. Our direct impact only lasts so long. I certainly wasn't going to spend the rest of my life living in Mongolia. And so I realized, being there, that the critical piece was to find others to work through, others within the system who would be there for much longer than I and would be able to create the kind of change that we all want to see as a global community. And it's true no matter where you are and no matter what you do. When that woman leaves her 9th-floor walk-up from meeting with the county health executive, the change that's most important is the change that sticks after she's gone. And so to me, the only change that really matters, or the change that I measure myself by, is the change that happens after I leave. And finally, this is exciting to announce on this stage. I actually have a co-presenter with me today. If you haven't been able to tell, for the past 5 months or so, this little boy or girl has been growing within my belly. And so some work that is so intimately related to families and kids that I've been working on for multiple years now has recently become all that more profound and all that more important to me. I can't imagine what it would be like to be facing the kinds of things that the moms I've met in these countries are facing. And with a cure or a preventative treatment that, to me, with very little public health background, is almost like a cure. It's amazing to me that we still have this problem. I think that there will be huge change happening in the coming years as we get towards elimination. And it's why I spend all of my time now working on this issue, because I don't believe that any mom should have to face that kind of challenge. And I believe that we can actually get to elimination. And with that, thank you very much.